On the morning of August 12th, 2026, at exactly 9:33 a.m. Eastern Time, millions of people around the world were watching the clock. Some had stocked up on supplies. Some had told their families to stay indoors. Some had genuinely, quietly prepared for the possibility that for 7 seconds, gravity itself would stop working. A viral claim had been spreading for days that a secret NASA program called Project Anchor had discovered something the public was never supposed to know. That on this exact date, Earth would experience a 7-second gravitational blackout. Cars would lift off the ground. Oceans would separate from the seafloor. People walking down the street would suddenly find themselves floating, and then, 7 seconds later, come crashing back down. It sounds absurd when you say it out loud. But by August 11th, Project Anchor was one of the most searched terms on the internet. Millions of views, hundreds of thousands of shares. And somewhere in the middle of all that panic, NASA was forced to do something it rarely does, issue a direct public statement just to say this is not going to happen. But here's the part of this story nobody's talking about. The way this rumor spread, the science of why it's impossible and what was actually happening in the sky that day, is far more interesting than the conspiracy theory itself. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand not just why gravity can never simply switch off, but why millions of smart, rational people were convinced, even briefly, that it could. Every viral conspiracy theory needs an origin story, and Project Anchor's began the way most modern ones do, with a screenshot. Sometime in late July 2026, a document began circulating on social media claiming to be a leaked internal NASA memo. It described a program supposedly running since 2019 with an alleged budget of $89 billion, dedicated to preparing the United States government for what it called a gravitational anomaly event, scheduled for August 12th, 2026 at 14:33 Coordinated Universal Time. The document had all the trappings of legitimacy: official-looking letterhead, technical jargon about gravitational field fluctuations, references to underground shelters and emergency protocols. It even claimed that certain government employees had been quietly briefed and told to remain indoors on that date. For a casual scroller on TikTok or Facebook, it looked convincing enough to pause on for a few extra seconds. And in the attention economy, a few extra seconds is all a rumor needs to start spreading. What made it spread faster than almost any other space-related rumor in recent memory was timing. August 12th, 2026 was not a random date pulled out of thin air. It happened to be a real, legitimate, rare astronomical event. A total solar eclipse was scheduled to sweep across parts of Greenland, Iceland, and northern Russia, clipping the edge of Spain and Portugal. On the same morning, 6 planets, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, were going to align in a rare visible parade across the pre-dawn sky. And that same night, the Perseid meteor shower, one of the most reliable and spectacular meteor showers of the year, was reaching its peak. 3 real astronomical events, all converging within a single 24-hour window. For conspiracy theorists, that kind of cosmic coincidence is irresistible. It does not take much imagination to look at a rare eclipse, a 6-planet alignment, and a meteor shower happening simultaneously and think something is happening here that we are not being told about. The fake Project Anchor document essentially hijacked a real, rare, and camera-worthy sky event and wrapped a fictional apocalypse around it. By August 5th, the hashtag had crossed into mainstream platforms. Fact-checking organizations began receiving hundreds of inquiries a day. Local news stations in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia started fielding calls from worried viewers asking whether they should keep their kids home from school. Some parents genuinely asked whether it was safe to drive a car that morning. Emergency rooms in a few cities reported a small uptick in anxiety-related visits in the days leading up to the 12th. A strange but very real human cost of a story that had absolutely no scientific basis. By August 10th, the theory had spawned its own subculture online. People filmed themselves supposedly preparing for the blackout, some in a spirit of dark humor, others with what appeared to be genuine concern. Prepper communities that normally discuss earthquakes, power grid failures, and severe weather suddenly found themselves fielding thousands of new questions about how to survive a gravitational anomaly, a phenomenon that, again, has never been observed anywhere in the history of physics. Understanding why millions of people believed, even temporarily, that gravity could vanish for 7 seconds tells us something important about how misinformation works in 2026. And it is worth pausing on this, because it is not just about one viral post. It is about a formula that keeps repeating itself. First, there is the illusion of specificity. The claim was not vague. It gave an exact date, an exact time down to the minute, an exact duration, and even an exact dollar figure for the alleged budget. Researchers who study misinformation have long known that specific numbers make false claims feel more credible than vague ones. A claim that says sometime this year something might happen gets ignored. A claim that says August 12th, 2026 at 14:33 UTC for exactly 7 seconds, triggers a completely different part of our brain, the part that treats precision as a proxy for truth. Our minds are wired to assume that if someone knows this much detail, they must know something real. Second, there is the appeal to secrecy. The word leaked does enormous psychological work. It suggests that somewhere, someone in power knows the truth and is hiding it from you, and that you, by seeing this post, have been led into a secret that ordinary people do not have access to. That feeling of being in the know is emotionally rewarding, and it makes people more likely to share the content because sharing it extends that feeling of insider status to their friends and followers. Nobody wants to be the person who saw the warning and did not pass it along. Third, there is the real astronomical backdrop, which is maybe the most important ingredient of all. If the claim had said gravity would vanish on a completely random, unremarkable date, it likely would not have gone anywhere. But because it was tied to a real total solar eclipse, a real 6-planet alignment, and a real meteor shower, it borrowed credibility from genuine science. People who searched August 12th, 2026 astronomy and found real NASA articles about the eclipse and planetary parade came away thinking, well, something big really is happening that day, so maybe the rest of it is true too. That is a classic case of what researchers call the halo effect, when one true detail lends false credibility to everything attached to it. Fourth, there is simple algorithmic amplification. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook reward content that generates strong emotional reactions and long watch times. A video that makes you feel a jolt of anxiety about floating off the ground is, unfortunately, exactly the kind of content that algorithms push to more people. The scarier the claim, the further it travels, regardless of whether it is true, because engagement metrics do not distinguish between fear and curiosity, they just measure how long you stopped scrolling. And fifth, there is a factor that gets overlooked in most discussions of viral misinformation, which is the sheer entertainment value of apocalyptic thinking. Humans have always been drawn to end-of-the-world scenarios, from ancient flood myths to medieval prophecies to modern disaster films. A 7-second gravity blackout is, in a strange way, a fun thing to imagine, even if you do not actually believe it. It gives people a shared cultural moment, something to joke about with coworkers, something to make short videos about, something to bond over. A meaningful percentage of the people sharing Project Anchor content were never truly convinced. They were simply participating in a moment of collective, low-stakes, playful anxiety, the internet's version of telling ghost stories around a campfire. To understand why NASA's denial was not just a dismissive statement, but an actual scientific certainty, we need to talk about what gravity really is and why the very premise of the rumor breaks down the moment you look at the physics. Gravity is not a force that is broadcast from somewhere, and it is not something that can be jammed, blocked, or switched off like a radio signal. According to Einstein's general theory of relativity, the most rigorously tested framework in all of physics, gravity is the curvature of space-time caused by mass. Earth has a mass of roughly 6 sextillion metric tons. That mass bends the fabric of space-time around it, and that curvature is what we experience as gravitational pull. As long as Earth's mass exists, that curvature exists, and as long as that curvature exists, gravity exists. There is no mechanism, natural or artificial, known to physics that could cause that curvature to simply vanish for 7 seconds and then reappear. To put it in perspective, for Earth to lose its gravitational field even briefly would require either the planet's entire mass to disappear and then reappear, or some entirely unknown force capable of temporarily canceling out space-time curvature across the whole planet. Neither of these things has ever been observed, theorized with any credible scientific backing, or hinted at by any peer-reviewed research anywhere in the world. It would be, quite literally, one of the most significant physics discoveries in human history, not something that would be casually mentioned in a leaked government memo with no supporting data, no equations, and no experimental basis whatsoever. NASA's own statement addressed this directly. A spokesperson explained that Earth's gravity is a function of its mass, plain and simple, and that no celestial event, including a total solar eclipse, has any measurable effect on that gravitational field. A solar eclipse happens because the moon passes directly between the sun and Earth, blocking sunlight from reaching a portion of the planet's surface. It is purely an optical event, a matter of geometry and shadow, nothing more. The moon's gravitational influence on Earth does not change during an eclipse any more than it does on any other day of the month. The physics of an eclipse has absolutely nothing to do with gravitational strength. Fact-checkers who investigated the leaked document itself found no trace of any program called Project Anchor in NASA's public records, congressional budget disclosures, or historical archives. There was no $89 billion line item anywhere in NASA's actual budget, which, for context, is publicly disclosed every single year and totals around $25 billion for NASA's entire annual operations across every mission, every telescope, every rover, and every research grant combined, let alone a single secret subprogram nearly 4 times that size. The math alone should have been an immediate red flag for anyone who paused to check it. It is also worth mentioning how scientific consensus actually works, because that is the part conspiracy theories almost always skip. A discovery on the scale of gravity temporarily vanishing would not stay contained within a single government agency. It would involve physicists at universities across dozens of countries, independent verification by multiple research institutions, published papers in peer-reviewed journals, and years of experimental confirmation before anyone would treat it as established fact. Real scientific breakthroughs are messy, slow, heavily scrutinized, and almost never kept secret for long, because scientists build their entire careers on being the first to publish and verify new findings. The idea that something this fundamental could be hidden inside a single leaked memo, with no supporting data and no independent confirmation from a single physicist anywhere on the planet, does not match how science, or scientists, actually behave. If this feels familiar, that is because it should. Project Anchor is only the latest entry in a long history of internet-driven doomsday panics tied to real astronomical events, and looking at the pattern helps explain why these theories keep resurfacing generation after generation, almost as if there is a template being reused with new details plugged in each time. Back in 2012, millions of people believed the world would end on December 21st because the ancient Maya calendar's long count cycle was ending on that date. In reality, the Maya calendar simply rolled over to a new cycle, the same way our own calendar resets every January 1st, but the rumor tied itself to a real, verifiable, astronomical, and cultural fact, which is exactly what gave it staying power for years leading up to the actual date. Around that same period, a rumor about a supposed rogue planet called Nibiru claimed it was on a collision course with Earth, and that NASA was covering it up. No such planet was ever found, obviously, because a body large enough to threaten Earth would have been visible to backyard telescopes years in advance. Its gravitational effects would have disrupted the orbits of the outer planets in ways astronomers would have detected immediately. Yet the rumor persisted for over a decade, resurfacing every time a real planetary alignment or comet approach made headlines. More recently, viral posts have falsely claimed that planetary alignments could trigger earthquakes, that solar storms would cause worldwide blackouts on specific predicted dates, and that eclipses have measurable effects on human biology beyond simple light exposure. In nearly every case, the pattern is identical. Take a genuine, rare, camera-worthy astronomical event, attach a fictional catastrophic consequence to it, add a countdown clock, and let social media algorithms do the rest of the work. What makes Project Anchor slightly different is the specificity of its financial and bureaucratic details, the exact dollar figure, the exact program name, the claim of a leaked internal document. This gave it a flavor closer to government conspiracy content than pure astronomical doomsday content, blending two of the internet's most reliably viral genres into a single, highly shareable package. It borrowed the aesthetic of both a UFO disclosure story and an end-of-the-world prophecy, which may explain why it spread across such a wide range of online communities, from science skeptics to prepper forums to people who simply enjoy a good scary story. There's also a slower, quieter pattern worth noting here. Each time one of these rumors gets debunked, it does not disappear from the internet, it simply gets archived, screenshotted, and recycled years later with a new date attached. Do not be surprised if, a few years from now, a similar claim resurfaces ahead of the next rare planetary alignment or eclipse, dressed up with a new name and a new set of specific numbers because the underlying formula clearly works, and someone, somewhere, will use it again. Now, even though we know with certainty this is not going to happen, it is worth taking the idea seriously as a pure thought experiment, because understanding just how catastrophic a real gravitational anomaly would be actually reinforces why scientists are so confident nothing like it is coming. And it happens to be a genuinely fascinating physics problem in its own right. If Earth's gravity genuinely disappeared for even 1 second, the consequences would be almost unimaginably severe, and nothing like the relatively gentle floating scenario the conspiracy theory describes. The atmosphere itself is held to the planet entirely by gravity. Without it, the air around us, which is currently pressing down on every square inch of the planet's surface with enormous force, would begin to expand outward into space almost instantly. The pressure differential alone would create hurricane-force winds far more violent than anything in recorded history, as air rushed to fill the sudden vacuum created by the loss of gravitational containment, tearing apart loose structures and stripping away anything not firmly secured to the ground. The oceans, which are essentially a thin film of water clinging to the surface of a spinning sphere purely because of gravitational attraction, would begin to lift away from the seafloor. Given Earth's rotational speed of roughly 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, anything not rigidly anchored to the ground, vehicles, loose structures, unsecured objects, and yes, human beings, would not just gently float. They would continue moving at whatever velocity the spinning Earth had already imparted to them, effectively being flung outward in complex, chaotic trajectories the instant the force holding them down disappeared, a scenario far more violent and disorienting than the calm, slow motion floating shown in most viral videos depicting the rumor. And then there is the return. When, if, gravity snapped back on after 7 seconds, everything that had drifted upward would suddenly experience the full pull of Earth's mass again, all at once. Structural engineers who have discussed this hypothetical scenario point out that the real danger would not be the floating itself. It would be the sudden, simultaneous return of full gravitational acceleration on objects, structures, and bodies that were never designed to absorb that kind of shock, essentially recreating the physics of a fall from height, but happening to every unsecured object on the entire planet at the exact same instant. The reason scientists can discuss this scenario in such vivid, confident detail is not because they are preparing for it. It is because the physics of gravity, mass, and atmospheric pressure are extraordinarily well understood. We can model exactly what would happen in a scenario we are certain will never occur, precisely because the underlying science is so thoroughly settled, tested, and confirmed across more than a century of experiments, satellite measurements, and everyday engineering applications that quietly rely on gravity behaving predictably every single day, from the bridges we drive across to the satellites orbiting overhead. While a portion of the internet spent the week leading up to August 12th anxiously counting down to a gravitational apocalypse, what actually unfolded that day was something genuinely worth watching. Real astronomy, not fiction, and arguably far more impressive than anything the conspiracy theory promised. In the early morning hours, sky watchers across parts of the northern hemisphere were treated to a rare 6-planet parade. Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune all appeared, stretched across the pre-dawn sky in a single sweeping arc, visible to the naked eye in several locations, and spectacularly clear through even modest backyard telescopes and binoculars. Alignments involving this many visible planets simultaneously are uncommon enough that many amateur astronomers had been planning their observation setups for months, coordinating viewing locations away from city light pollution to catch the clearest possible view. Later that day, a total solar eclipse swept across the far north of the planet, tracing a path through northern Russia, across Greenland, over Iceland, and clipping the northernmost edge of Spain, with a small corner of Portugal catching the edge of the shadow as well. For the people standing directly in the path of totality, the sky darkened in the middle of the day, temperatures noticeably dropped by several degrees within minutes, and for a brief window measured in minutes rather than seconds, the sun's corona became visible around the silhouette of the moon, one of the most awe-inspiring natural spectacles the sky has to offer, drawing thousands of eclipse chasers to remote viewing sites across 3 continents. And, as if that were not enough for one 24-hour period, the Perseid meteor shower, widely regarded as one of the most reliable and visually impressive meteor showers of the entire year, reached its peak that same night, sending dozens of bright streaks across the darkened sky for observers away from city lights, with some fireballs bright enough to be caught on standard smartphone cameras. No cars floated away, no oceans lifted off the seafloor. Gravity performed exactly as it has for the past 4.5 billion years. What actually happened was arguably more remarkable than the fictional version. A genuinely rare convergence of 3 real astronomical events, unfolding exactly as astronomers had calculated years in advance down to the minute, with no secret government program required, no leaked documents, and no need for a countdown clock built on fear. There is a broader lesson buried inside all of this, one that applies far beyond a single viral rumor about gravity. Real astronomical events, the kind NASA and space agencies around the world actually announce, are almost always framed in careful, measured technical language. They come with precise coordinates, peer-reviewed data, and explanations of exactly how the observation or calculation was made. They rarely, if ever, come with countdown clocks, dramatic warnings to stay indoors, or claims that a shadowy program has been hiding the truth for years. A simple filter that can help separate genuine space news from manufactured panic involves asking 3 questions whenever a scary space claim crosses your feed. First, is this claim published or confirmed by an actual space agency, university astronomy department, or peer-reviewed journal, rather than only existing as a screenshot or a leaked document with no traceable source? Second, does the claim violate any well-established law of physics? And if it does, treat that as a very strong signal that something is wrong. Because genuine scientific discoveries that overturn established physics take years of verification before they are announced, not a single anonymous leak. Third, does the claim rely on emotional language and urgency? Phrases like, "they don't want you to know this," or "prepare now," rather than calm, technical explanation, because manufactured panic almost always needs urgency to spread, while real science is patient and welcomes scrutiny. Applying those 3 questions to Project Anchor would have unraveled the entire rumor within minutes. There was no traceable source beyond social media screenshots. It directly violated one of the most thoroughly tested principles in all of physics. and it relied entirely on fear-based, urgent language designed to make people share first and think later. So here's the real takeaway. The universe does not need fabricated conspiracies to be extraordinary. A 6-planet parade, a total solar eclipse tracing across 3 continents, and a meteor shower peaking on the very same night, all predicted with pinpoint accuracy by scientists using nothing but math, physics, and centuries of careful observation, is already more remarkable than any fictional gravity blackout could ever be. The next time a countdown clock, a leaked document, and a scary acronym start trending together, ask yourself the same question NASA's scientists always ask first: does this violate a law of physics we have tested a million times over? Because more often than not, the honest answer to what is really happening up there is stranger, more beautiful, and infinitely more interesting than the fear-based version circulating online. If you want to see the real discoveries as they happened, the black holes, the dying stars, the galaxies doing things we have never seen before, make sure you are subscribed, because that is exactly what we cover here, every single day.